All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is 26th day of December, day after Christmas. Hope if you celebrate Christmas, you had a happy Christmas, a Merry Christmas. Even if you don't celebrate it, I hope that you had a merry, happy day yesterday. Very quiet for me. Didn't do anything much. Just sort of hung around the house, which was totally cool, actually. Totally fine. Looking forward now to going up to New York State to where I grew up, my hometown, Rye, New York, to spend a few days with my family. My family where my mom, my sisters, and then bring in the new year. So I'll be off tomorrow as I'm travel. It's travel day for me. It'll be a traveling day. And then the first through next week through Wednesday, which I guess is the first, and I'll be on Thursday, Friday. So not that many days off, actually. I thought I was going to be off all next week. Turns out I'm not going to be. I thought this is sort of funny before I get into the program. Got a call looking at the number here, and I hope that you'll be able to join me, by the way, on my last day of the year. And yeah, there, the phone. I don't know if you heard that, but the phone is actually ringing. Just tested it. There was a call to that number, 240-242-5646, which is only live. No one's going to be able to even hear it ring except maybe under very rare circumstances if for some reason I'm testing something. The only time that number is accessible or that I'll even know anyone's calling me is while I'm doing this program, which is generally, although not invariably and not perfectly, noon to 1 Eastern time, Monday through Friday. So if it's not during that time, or if you don't see the live when you're listening, you're watching a replay, you're watching, the recorded version of it. And someone called the line at, I don't mean to chuckle, sorry, at 1:31 this morning. So maybe they were watching at 1:31, I'm assuming, and decided they wanted to call, because otherwise I don't know how you'd even know this phone number. So that's my speculation. I don't know. I don't recognize the number either. Have seen a little uptick in subscriptions. I said that's what I want for the holidays, and I absolutely do want you to subscribe if you aren't already a subscriber. I can't think of anything I'd like better than for you to subscribe to Halitics. Yeah, that would be awesome if you haven't done so already. And like I said, we're seeing a little bit of an uptick in the subscriptions. So that's really nice, and also in the total number of views. So that is also really, really, really nice. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a little surprised because it hasn't always, it's taken me a long time even to get to where I am, which is not nearly as far as I want to go. But I'm not so surprised because I guess I'm arrogant enough or narcissistic enough or pompous enough to think I do deliver a pretty good product. And when I compare it to some of the other stuff I see online, I'm like, wow, they're able to get big audiences. Why the hell am I not? Of course, that's a question we all, I think, ask ourselves in any kind of entertainment or, in media type businesses. How do we build our audience, and what are they doing that I'm not, or how come they're able to better than I am? The story we will start today with this story out from Gaza, and it was not a Merry Christmas in any of the Christian areas of Israel, Gaza, Palestine, whatever you want to call it, different areas, but not a Merry Christmas at all. 38 killed in Israeli attacks. And I'll play a video of the services at I believe it was a Catholic church, certainly a Christian church in Gaza City. There are a number of Christian Palestinians. And Bethlehem, of course, the mythical, I don't know, maybe it's not mythical. There may or may not have been a Jesus. We really don't know. There's no, as far as I know, there are no contemporaneous reports of a Jesus of Nazareth. The Gospels came after he had died, significantly after, but there were a number of religious itinerants during that period of time of great upheaval and cruelty, sadism. The Roman Empire was particularly brutal in its treatment of the inhabitants of that region, the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. So, there were faith healers and other religious mystics and the like. So there may well have been someone called Jesus of Nazareth or someone of that very similar who we now look back on as historical Jesus. We just don't know. Nobody really knows. But Bethlehem is considered to have been his birthplace, and they often have celebrations. They do every Christmas have celebrations, except not this Christmas, not last Christmas, because of the Israeli death machine. 38 killed in Israeli attacks across Gaza in 24 hours. And the numbers, we missed, I missed a program, so I don't have the death toll for the 24th either. I didn't have it announced yesterday, so we had 38 yesterday, according to Al Jazeera. And of course, these are always very round numbers. There's always people that we aren't discovered, and the number of dead fluctuates to a degree. Perhaps there are even some who their families have given up hope, and then they appear not dead. So, maybe every now and then somebody who's in the category of killed, murdered by Israel, turns out not to be dead, but the count just only goes up, and because there's so many that we do know are killed, but we don't know who they are yet. Israel and the Biden-Harris administration have killed over 45,338 identified Gazans since October 7, and that total includes 61 victims since Tuesday. So 38, if I do my math right, 38 yesterday, Christmas, and then on the 24th, that would be another 23, 61 Israel's killing. I have a video I want to play. This is from Al Jazeera, right? I mean, I don't have my own independent reporters out there. It'd be kind of cool. I know. Just want to give a shout out. We'll play some clips today from the latest. I think it's her latest, Brianna Joy Gray. She's with Nina Turner. She had some interesting things, both of them did, to say, and I'm going to play it. Some I kind of agreed with and some I didn't totally agree with, but generally I think she's one of the best. There's some other people out there I think really were very bad takes, wrong-headed takes. I'm not going to play them. I'm trying to, not waste everybody's time by picking apart, pointing holes or massive logic gaps in some of my, what do you want to call them, people that I compete with, competitors, if you want to even call them that. But I really like, in general, Brianna Joy Gray. I think she's one of the best. I've often said that. And generally, I think she is the second best out there. I like Due Distance Bros, but I think Brianna Joy Gray brings more humanity and a stronger sense of true ethics, as well as solutions. I'm all about trying to find solutions to our problems, and the Due Distance Bros don't seem all about that. So, yeah, we'll play Brianna Joy Gray. Today's program, entitled Will We Overcome Our Psychology? This program was triggered by a report I saw actually on Facebook. Like, it was one of those Throwback Thursday types where they show articles from the Wayback Machine. So this was 2017, Elizabeth Colbert, and she talks about how facts don't change our minds. Over and over, studies have shown that people express strong opinions, and often those opinions are incorrect. And even when the facts are shown right under their noses, people still don't change their minds. I thought there was a massive irony to that article that the author herself is completely unaware of, and I'm going to point that out as well in the program. But we'll get to that. I think that's going to finish up the year because I was so interested in it, and that resistance to logic, to reason, that Colbert writes about extremely well. She's a great writer. It's just fascinating to me that she doesn't even see it in herself. She can't see that she herself has fallen into that exact pit of ignoring and resisting facts and logic that don't suit her agenda. And I'm sure I do that too. I always want people to point it out, say, well, you say this, but the facts don't prove it. They don't show it. And the problem is, a good example of that, I know I'm giving a lot of intro and we'll get into the stories, but, I'm dead set against the American promotion of the war in Ukraine, our proxy war with Russia. I think it's a terrible mistake. I'm totally against it for many reasons, which I've detailed. And I know many of you think I'm completely wrong on that, off base, that we have to do this, we have to stand up to Putin. And it's hard to know which, I think the facts prove I'm right, but others would say, no, the facts prove they're right. And we can't even agree. It's not just that the facts don't change our minds, but we don't even agree on the facts or what the facts mean. So I don't know. So the answer is maybe we cannot overcome our psychology. Maybe we cannot overcome that resistance to facts that in the past served the human species quite well in many cases, or at least served bands of human species quite well. For example, and I often point this one out, if you have the position that the tribe that lives on the other side of the river is completely demonic, and that they have been taken over by some kind of evil spirits, and the only way we can survive them is to kill them all and take their land, that's clearly false, right? I mean, we now know logically that people are not inhabited by truly evil spirits. They might go crazy, they might become schizophrenic. That is true. That does happen to individuals. And there are cults, we know all that, but ultimately it's very unlikely, or it's not true that some kind of devil or demons have inhabited the entire group of people who live on the other side of the river. But if you believe that, if you resist your own logic, if you say, well, I see them go about their business and they go collect water from the river and they take care of their children and they mow their, they grow their grains and they do everything exactly the same as we do. There's really no difference between them. And not only that, but I happen to know that there's even some, third cousins who live in that village as opposed to in my village. If you say all that to yourself, you're going to resist that argument. That logic is going to cause you not to believe that the people on the other side of the river are evil and demons and possessed by Satan. And if you don't believe that, then you're going to be far less likely to go cross the river in the dead of night and stab them all and kill them all and steal their land and rape their women and enslave their children. But if you do kill all the men and you rape the women and you enslave their children, then you actually promote your own genetic legacy. And so the resistance to logic, the resistance to facts, actually served you quite well in that case, in that circumstance. So in the past, that has worked for us, for individuals, for our ancestors. What was his, Genghis Khan, I think, believed he was the scourge of God. And as the scourge of God, he went around killing millions of people. So that served him well because his progeny re-inhabited areas that he had decimated, that he had basically rendered empty of human habitation or greatly reduced in human habitation. So that did serve his genetic legacy quite well. So in the past, resistance to logic, obviously, Attila the Hun wasn't the scourge of God. But him believing it and his followers believing that allowed them to engage in behaviors that benefited their genetic legacy. So it's very tough. I don't know how we overcome this. I think it's very, very, very frightening that this is how we've evolved psychologically, and we continue, and so we behave in incredibly bad ways, harmful ways often, not always. Of course, we have lots of good, and pretend we don't have good and love in us. We do have all of that, which is why this is so sad, because we destroy the good as well as the bad, of course. So that's what's so sad. So I had that video. We'll play the video from Gaza later. Let me just get this story up real quick. I don't know. The video from Gaza, well, I think it's worth playing. It is because, I want to give you a full picture, and it doesn't seem as grim as some of the other videos I played but it's still horrible, obviously. No Christmas cheer in Bethlehem for second year amid war in Gaza. Palestinian priests share a message of hope and resistance as they celebrate a scaled-down Christmas in the birthplace of Jesus. So very, very, very sad. And one thing that struck me about all this is, why haven't Christians been more outspoken against Israel? Why haven't they been more, in this country for sure? You'd think there would be a massive outcry. The Israelis are killing Christians. They are absolutely murdering, massacring Palestinian Christians. Why are Christians letting this go? I don't understand. It doesn't seem logical to me. This really bad guy out there, Matthew Iglesias, he's like a center-right Dem, I guess, or corporate Dem, or whatever you want to call him. He's always making excuses for the hegemony, for the American empire. But Nathan Robinson, who I actually criticized earlier this month on Halitics, has a great piece just totally exposing him for the charlatan he is, for his faulty logic, his poor arguments, his contradictions. He made the argument, Robinson did, that he understands why Rashida Tlaib is critical of Israel, because after all, she's Palestinian, right? So, okay, Israel's just, mowing through Gaza, killing Palestinians left, right, and center, children, women, innocents. They're committing genocide. They're also stealing land from Palestinians. So, according to Iglesias, okay, so that makes it okay for Tlaib to be opposed to what Israel's doing, or at least understandable in his worldview. But what he doesn't get is, well, I don't understand why these college students care. Most of them aren't Palestinian. Very few are. And even some of them are Jewish. What do they care about those Palestinian lives being destroyed and being murdered? It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, well, by that logic, Iglesias, shouldn't Christians be all pissed off at Israel? Shouldn't Christians, according to you, they would be appropriately critical of Israel? They would appropriately want to take on Israel. They would appropriately want to stop arming Israel, because Israel's killing lots and lots of Palestinian Christians. And here is the story from Middle East Eye. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, city of Bethlehem, marked a somber Christmas for the second year in solidarity with Gaza, where Israelis have killed 45,000 people in over a year. No festive lights, no Christmas trees, just religious rituals and prayers. Manger Square, obviously the area that is considered to have been where Jesus was born, in the manger. Every year they have, a festival. Scouts, a choir, decorations, so singing. It's festive, it's holiday. A tree is raised, carols are sung, said a Greek Orthodox parish priest, Father Issa Thalgier. But this year, no signs of joy. So that's what Israel is doing to the Christian community in Palestine. No joy. I wonder if Iglesias thinks it's okay for those Christians to be critical of Israel. Maybe is that okay with you, Iglesias? I'm just sort of curious. I just wonder, because you seem to think it's only if it's like your co-religionists or people from your same village or something who are being killed that you're allowed to be upset. So I just wonder whether under these circumstances you're going to, say, okay, yeah, they shouldn't have done it. We get why, it's okay for Christians to say Israel's genocidal and maniacal, sadistic, murderous. Is that okay with you? I'm just curious, just wondering, just saying, Maddie, just saying. All right, we'll get that video on in a moment. Just again, want to remind you, hey, if you haven't yet, please do like what I'm doing here and subscribe. So you can see the little thumb up. Yeah, I've kind of got a little bit, what is the word? I like that thumb there. I like it's kind of cool, right? So, and there's the subscribe button. So you got a lot there. We'll get to the video now. So this is from courtesy of Al Jazeera. They always do a good job. Here we go.
I'm right now standing in the Latin Church, which belongs to the Catholics here in the besieged Gaza Strip. During this ongoing Israeli war that is taking place for more than 400 days, and the Israeli war, doesn't differentiate between Christians and Muslims. As we have spoken to Christians here.
So let me stop it there. So what he said, you heard, the war doesn't differentiate, obviously. Bombs aren't able to say, okay, you're a Muslim, so we're going to kill you. The explosion is going to blow up the Muslim, but not the Christian. Obviously, it doesn't work that way, right? We all know that that's not how bombs work. So given that fact, I have to wonder, again, are Christians who are seeing their own people, right? They're Christian, right? Being massacred. Are they allowed to criticize Israel? I wonder what Matthew Iglesias would say, because he seems to be, he gives a special dispensation to Rashida Tlaib to criticize Israel. So I wonder whether the Christians in Gaza, but around the world also, the billions of Christian people around the world can also complain.
They are not happy with this Christmas, the second consecutive Christmas that they witness here in the besieged Gaza Strip. As you can see, this is the scene here in front of the Latin Church in northern central Gaza Strip. They are just gathering here.
This year we celebrate despite the fact that we're not happy because of the current war and the disasters that are everywhere. The real celebration will be on the day this war stops. We hope this war will come to an end sooner rather than later. Enough death and enough shelling. Enough is enough. A lot of our beloved ones were martyred. This grief and the sadness are everywhere.
We lost our houses and apartments. The building where I was living has been leveled. I resorted together with a lot of other people to the church that has taken good care of us. The church played a great role in keeping us alive. Otherwise, we might have been dead by now. This time, the celebration is different. This time, we are without our children who traveled abroad, and without our apartments that have been destroyed. We are here today just to pray, and that's it.
They wish that an immediate ceasefire will take place so that they will celebrate the proper way. As you can see, this is the scene in front of your eyes inside the Latin Church. Ibrahim Khalili, Al Jazeera, Northern Gaza, Palestine.
All right, so there it is. Really sad times. Awful. They're living amidst a genocide, and many are dying amidst that genocide by Israel. And just to get back to the theme of the program, can we overcome our psychology, which is to resist logic, to resist facts? And Israel's entire campaign in Gaza is based on the lie that somehow that land is theirs, that they get to occupy it, that it somehow was given to Israel by God. Now, do I think Bibi Netanyahu really believes that? No. But he uses it to justify mass murder. And it benefits, right? There's a real, tangible, genetic benefit to the Israelis. They're going to clear out the land. They'll occupy it. More Israeli children, more Jewish children, the progeny will have the genetic legacy, the genes of the winners of this war. Mass slaughter, I think, is a better word for it. So can we overcome that? Can we say, you know what? It may be to my own selfish individual benefit, or it certainly was to my ancestors' selfish individual benefit, to believe things that aren't true. But now it's destroying us. Now it's no longer working for us, right? It's causing all sorts of terrible harm around the world. And I'm also going to suffer, or I am suffering as a result of it. Specifically, if from nothing else, the climate collapse, the ecological collapse. Can we get to that place where we say, you know what, we've got to be willing to look facts squarely in the eye and adjust our behaviors, modify the way we act? Can we do that? You know, the New York Times does everything possible to try to make you think that the facts aren't the facts, that somehow what in the case of Israel we just talked about, what Israel's doing is somehow justified, is somehow okay, that it's not just mass murder. So they have the story they just report, which, by the way, I give them a lot of credit. You know, I subscribe to it. I learn, I would be far more ignorant, and I'm quite ignorant of many, many things. I'd be even more ignorant if I didn't read the paper, you know, a lot of the New York. I don't read all of it, of course. I mean, I skim and I look for stories that support my worldview, just like we all do. But this was really jumped out at me today, Dateline today. Israel loosened its rules to bomb Hamas fighters, killing many more civilians. So the New York Times justifies this change in policy that Netanyahu announced right after October 7, or during October 7, actually, which allowed the Israeli military to go ahead and bomb buildings, residences. You're willing, you know, you can risk up to 20 civilian deaths is the basic policy, just to get one identified Hamas fighter. And of course, everyone's a identified Hamas fighter, so they can kill anybody they want under any circumstances. But that's the fig leaf. Well, we were going after this one Hamas fighter, and they changed the rules of engagement. Previously, the Israeli military was directed not to blow up the families of suspected Hamas militants. So you wouldn't blow them up at 3 a.m. in their house or their apartment, because if you blow them in their house, then they're, you know, if they're married, their children, their parents, their grandparents, their grandchildren, they all get killed. So we're not going to do that. And you wouldn't blow them up if their residence was an apartment, because then the whole building, you know, would be blown up, and you might blow up 40, 50, 70 people, however many lived in that apartment. But now you say, well, there's 80 people in that apartment building, but we think there are 4 Hamas fighters, so 4 times 20 is 80, so we can blow up the whole building. And if we get it wrong, well, we acted in good faith. We thought they were there. So that's the way Israel changed their rules of killing. So here's how the New York Times justifies it. Oh, well, Israel is fearful of another October 7 style attack. So they weakened safeguards meant to protect non-combatants. And then they even acknowledge it. One of the deadliest attacks of the 21st century followed. Now, the safeguards, okay, so the first clause, the operative phrase rather in that sense, fearful. So it's from the Israeli perspective. How can we say, well, we'll be honest, it's not so good. It doesn't look good, all those dead people. Children, you put bullets in the heads of little kids. Doesn't look good, Israel. But hey, we get it. You were fearful of another October 7 attack. Do you think this is making Israel safer? I don't really think it is. I'll be honest with you. I don't see that. But that's how the New York Times wants you to look at what Israel's doing, that they're telling you Israel's doing. And not be so outraged, not be so sickened, not be so disgusted and horrified that, you might even say, I can't vote for that Kamala Harris. I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. They don't want you to do that. That wouldn't be good for them or their advertisers. Might be good for you. Wouldn't be good for them or their advertisers. All right, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I'm going to get to that Elizabeth Colbert piece from the New Yorker, which again is talks about how we simply are not, we're hardwired basically to ignore facts in many circumstances. We are hardwired not to change our opinions in many circumstances. And we'll get to that. I want to play this video from Brianna Joy Gray, who I really like, and Nina Turner, who I also really like. And I think there's a lot of really good in them. But facts don't always support what they say either, sadly enough. I agree with their conclusions for sure, but they're seeing things with a little bit rosier colored glasses perhaps than I do. And again, before I play it, 240-242-5646, would love to talk to you. By the way, it was great. And Ari, I am not calling on you to call again right now. Don't do it if you don't want to. Don't get into, bother if this isn't a good time. But I do thank you for calling Wednesday. And if you haven't seen Wednesday's program, I think Wednesday's program did really well. Got a lot of hits. So that's good. But yeah, made it a real good program. Kama lost no joy. And then Ari loves when I talk about, really appreciates my discussion of Palestine. Here's Brianna Joy and Senator Nina Turner.
It's Joyanne Reed and Jason Johnson talking about the need for healthcare reform.
Who are falling in love with Luigi Mangione are opposed to regulating the insurance companies.
Yes.
That is how you could actually stop them from taking advantage of us. I think left and right, we agree. The system is broken. Insurance companies are bilking us. United Healthcare is that big for a reason. They're being sued for a reason. But like you said, they'll just replace him with another CEO and keep doing it to you. But regulation would actually fix it. They're against that.
Listen to what she said. She's saying they need regulation, right? That's what the Affordable Care Act is. Regulation. That regulation would solve the problem of the insurance companies bilking us. Well, it didn't solve it. We have regulation. We have a strong regulatory scheme, and it hasn't done anything to protect us from these insurance crooks, these ghouls. So that's not a solution. It's neoliberalism. It's let's rely on for-profit corporations working with the government to maximize their returns and make sure that people get something, a little something out of it. That's not the solution. It's very clear. They're talking, they're not about solving problems.
People don't want to understand that part. They want the catharsis of this one-man action that will supposedly...
And also, listen to the way they're mocking the people, right? Oh, people just want the catharsis, but they don't really want to solve the problem. They're against the regulations that will help. So these two are bashing the victims. They're victim shaming and victim blaming, rather than, again, saying, hey, what we really need is one payer, like everyone else in the world has, and that works much better. But they're not saying that. They're clearly not saying that.
I'm talking about the anesthesiologists a week ago, like, oh, that changed because of what happened. Probably not. That was a much...
All right, so that story is about this change in policy that Anthem Blue Cross announced and then has decided to go back on, which is that they're going to... I'll show you more, but he's saying it wasn't pressure. It wasn't because Luigi killed the CEO. That's not why Anthem Blue Cross is doing the right thing, according to Jason Johnson. Does that hold up? We'll get to that in just a moment, but I just want to play a little more from this.
Situation. If there was a general level of understanding about healthcare, if we actually have members of Congress who would engage healthcare as an actual issue, not as just a political ploy to be bounced back and forth, you would.
All right, so he's just, spouting. All right, let me get this here. He's just spouting. I was having some trouble there with my mic muted button, one place it didn't show up correctly. But the theory, the point about the Blue Cross Blue Shield policy change is kind of ridiculous, because their policy change was actually because of all the outrage, the outcry that's only in the media as a result of what Mangione did. So the Today Show, certainly no progressive outlet by any means, They're real clear. Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield will not proceed with policy change that wouldn't cover anesthesia after certain time limits. And why? It was widespread outrage that met that decision, including their own anesthesiologists, some of whom are members of a group that said this is just a cynical money grab. What Blue Cross Blue Shield said is, hey, if a surgical procedure lasts longer than we think it should, then we're not going to pay for the anesthesia after a certain period of time. So presumably the anesthesiologist is going to say, you know what, I'm cutting off the anesthesia. Pretty soon the patient will experience excruciating pain. And ultimately there was a lot of pressure brought on Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. But Jason Johnson doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Or he's just lying is probably the better answer. Couldn't care less about the truth. But regardless, the position that they're espousing on that program is anti-patient, anti-human. It's just immoral. But I sadly, and you'd think, I would have thought, Brianna Joy Gray and Senator Nina Turner would get that. But they don't. They want to believe so badly that maybe there's some decency in these people. Maybe they really are allies. It just seems like that's where they are with this, because otherwise I have no explanation. Really, I cannot understand this conversation that they had right after they played that clip. I got that clip from their show, so it's not like they didn't see it. They played it. So here you go. Here they are.
Out about the oligarchs. I know you remember all too well how this brother argued me down. I was on MSNBC with Chris Matthews at the time, who was still there, and railing against oligarchs before it was cool to use the word in this country. And he literally was not even engaged in the conversation, but we were in two different locations, but he had the nerve to pull up what I had to say in that moment and defend oligarchs, if you can believe that. I mean,
Yep.
If you're not one of them, why the hell are you defending them? But that is what that man did, to the depth. And then the island of misfits, women, girls, whatever the hell he called us at the time. But yeah, that is galling to hear him talk about Medicare for all and how people.
All right, so I'll stop it there. He doesn't talk about Medicare for all. I was so amazed when I heard her say that, because there was no mention of Medicare for all in what Johnson said. And I don't know whether it's just wishful thinking. I don't know whether it's a hope that if we keep talking about it, the corporate media will somehow pick it up. You know, I really like Senator Turner a lot, Senator Nina Turner. I really like Nina Turner. But one thing I noticed, and I met her and I've talked to her and I've worked with her, is that she is one of the most critical, the most self-critical Democrats I know. She's one of the Democrats who's most prepared, most willing, unlike just about every other one, to really go after her own party in a pretty serious and systemic way and point out its many flaws. And she does that in this video. I'm not going to play the clip, where she really goes after AOC. But ultimately, she stands with the Democrats. Ultimately, she's not prepared to completely leave the party and say, this party cannot serve us. This party cannot solve our interests. And if she said, okay, MSNBC, which is the mouthpiece of the Democratic Party, is still all in for-profit health care, despite the fact that Anthem Blue Cross announced that it was going to stop covering anesthesia after the first hour of surgery or whenever the surgery was supposed to end. Despite that, she can't quite say, we've got to go in a different direction. So in her mind, maybe she hears Jason Johnson, who is, again, a spokesperson, a Spock's really just a shill for the Democrats. In her mind, she hears him saying, yeah, maybe we do need Medicare for all, when he never says that. And the reason I bring this up, we can't, there's just no hope from this group, from the elite. They're not going to be pro-healthcare for people. They're not going to be pro-people. They're not going to be pro-life. That's not who they are. They're pro-corporate. And there's a direct conflict of interest between corporate behemoths, corporate billionaire owners, corporate multi-millionaire managers. Their interests simply do not align with yours. But Senator Nina Turner isn't prepared to just say that. She can't quite say that. And it's, I mean, she'll even say that probably, but what she won't say is the Democrat Party will not take them on. The Democrat Party is lock, stock, and barrel owned by corporate elites and billionaire elites. And they're never going to take on the Democratic Party. She can't say that. She won't say that. That's why she hears in this Democratic shill, this mouthpiece, that's why she hears him say, oh yeah, I guess they're for Medicare for all. At least he's going to talk about it. All right, one more clip from her, then I want to get to the climate catastrophe, and then we'll call it a day.
There's 18, I think they did 18 to 29, I believe, are split on whether or not they thought the killing was right or wrong, you know, and certainly I am not upholding, I'm a humanitarian, so no, I do not believe that it was right to kill that CO. I think there's something.
See, I have a problem when she says that. And I get why she said it. I do. I mean, look, all of us are like, you don't go up to someone in broad daylight and put a bullet to their head, put a gun to their head and put a bullet in it. That's just instinctively wrong. But we instinctively feel that's wrong. But you have to understand the context. This is, we are really like captive to these billionaires. They control our lives to an extent that we haven't really seen in maybe, you know, since feudal times, where the Lord made all the decisions about your life. And whether we live or die really is often up to the death panels that Brian Thompson impaneled and others like him. I think, you know, when you condemn what Luigi did, you really are missing the bigger picture. It's the wrong question to ask. The wrong question is, was it right or wrong what Mangione did? It's the wrong question to ask, was it right or wrong what Hamas did on October 7th? That's not the right question. The question you ask is, why did this happen? How can we prevent this from happening again? What kinds of crimes led to this happening? Now, we don't always say that, right? But there are certain dynamics that we cannot ignore. When powerful, oppressive empires abuse and mistreat people over years, decades, they're going to respond. They're going to respond violently. And that is to be understood and expected. Likewise, when corporate CEOs make life and death decisions based solely on how much it will profit them, and they take enormous salaries for themselves, far beyond most people's wildest imaginations, then there's going to be violent response, violent reaction. And that's just to be understood. So it's the wrong question to ask, well, was this right or wrong? We can all have our own opinions. It wasn't self-defense. But if he wasn't in that moment, that CEO wasn't in that moment going to kill anybody, right? But what you're seeing with the killing by Mangione of Thompson, what you saw on October 7 is battered spouse syndrome. You saw people whose lives are intimately wound up in somebody else's or some other groups. And they're being battered day after day. They're being psychologically battered. And they're, at least in the case of the Palestinian people, physically, physiologically battered and often killed. And for Americans too, often killed by these healthcare companies. Or if not killed, bankrupted by them. So what you're seeing now is really a battered spouse syndrome and people saying this is just wrong what these people are doing. Just wrong. From Emogi, my Kamala voting family consider Luigi to be a Robin Hood-esque hero, which was a pleasant surprise. Yeah, I mean, I see that 100%. 100 friggin' percent. Thanks, Emogi, for sharing that. All right. And by the way, when we go into the new year, I'm going to announce this because I'm going to really, really try to do this. And sometimes when I announce things that I don't really want to do, I do them because I announce them. I'm going to really try to break up my program. I'll do the live broadcast like I do now, take calls for the first, for an hour or so. And then I'm going to try, it's going to be a lot of work for me, but I'm just going to say I'm going to try to cut the program up into separate segments. So we have maybe 3-4 segments somewhere in the 15, 20-minute range. Maybe some will be even shorter because I know that many people prefer the bite-size oat square style. You know, we call them oat squares in my family. If you talk too long, we say oat square because an oat square, I think they're Kellogg's, right? Kellogg's oat square? No, Quaker Oats. Oat squares are just the perfect bite-sized chunk to eat. They're not too big, like a shredded wheat, giant square, or giant box, or whatever those things are. They're huge. You have to break them up with your fork. But the oat square just comes perfect size for you to eat. So I'll try to break my program up into oat squares so that you don't have to, paw around for an hour or what have you. We'll still do the live show so you can call in, of course, but then my goal will be to break it up. And we'll try. That's going to start in the new year. The climate catastrophe continues anew. This is the facts, right? So we're getting back again. Can we learn from facts? Can we change our minds? Can we change our behavior? And it's going to be very, very difficult. Will we? A big reason we're not is because of propaganda, because we're constantly being hit with false information designed to persuade us that the truth is not the truth. So that's why I think a lot of people don't accept the global climate collapse, right? I think they can't accept it because they're hearing many people tell them it isn't true, or they're hearing arguments to dismiss the people who the scientists who propose it, who propose the theory and have proven it. But the facts are the facts, and you can see this chart, which lays it out incredibly clearly. Since 1949, which was the average year in terms of temperatures, since the 1850s, we've seen temperatures get hotter and hotter, and they're spiking, and they're spiking now. So we saw a more gradual increase, but it's like a reverse parabola, right? Or it is a parabolic, with the last few years just going through the roof. And I highlighted ENSO neutral conditions. That means it's not La Nina, it's not El Nino. When we had this year, this 24, second warmest November for global ocean surface temperatures under ENSO. So not, if you have I think it's La Nina, it gets hotter. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. It doesn't really matter because it's neutral. Last year was the hottest. This year, the second hottest. So our future depends. Our future, our survival, at least in anywhere near the kind of, wealthy, civilized life that we enjoy. It depends on us reining in our burning fossil fuels. But I don't know that we can do it. Just we're just not prepared to accept facts that may cause us some discomfort. There you go. The El Nino Southern Oscillation. We're neutral. So the second hottest year ever, the second hottest November ever, occurred, as you can see, under ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, neutral temperature variations. So you can't say, well, this was a special year, it was a unique year. All right, we'll finish up. I do want to get into that story. It's really interesting because the ability to understand the facts and to accept them and to recognize that this requires us to cut back significantly and continuously our use of fossil fuels is essential for our survival. And obviously neither party was going to go there, could go there. They refused to go there. I don't believe, by the way, that's because they don't think we can accept it. My view is that's because they're donors, they're funders, they're investors, they're financiers, include fossil fuel companies and those who profit from burning up our planet. Excuse me for hitting the mic there. I think we can accept that fact. But I think the fact we couldn't accept is that we had to vote for someone other than either Harris or Trump if we wanted to save our planet. I think that was the fact that our reason just could not get us to. Just don't think we couldn't quite get there. And it's because, many times being rational didn't serve the purpose, didn't serve purposes of the organisms from which we evolved. So there are limitations on reason. And I thought this was so interesting because Colbert goes through all of the details of why that is. Why, when we live in a group setting, there are major costs involved when you're too rational, when you take on the logic of the group. People don't like it. They get angry. You may become ostracized. You may be pushed out into the desert. And if that happens, you die. So there's a lot of value to not being outspoken and not calling out bull crap when you hear it, because people don't want to hear that. And also, as we discussed earlier, or as I discussed earlier, there's a lot of value in promoting lies, promoting falsehoods that logic doesn't support, especially about your enemies. So, Elizabeth Colbert, I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't think it's pronounced Colbert. It's pronounced Colbert. She provides us with an explanation. Now remember, this was written in 2017 for what happens, what's the cost of resisting logic? What's the cost of resisting facts? And she identifies it as getting the Trump administration. So it's the fault. The people, based on her argument, the people who aren't rational, the people who resist logic and facts, are those who voted for Trump. And I have a huge problem with that. I wrote an article shortly after the election that presented, I believe, pretty convincing data that Trump won because he was more of a pro-peace candidate than Hillary, and he was more of an anti-free, quote, free, unquote, trade. He was he was for tariffs. That's why he won. Now, that's not why everyone voted for him by any means. And there were many other reasons that people voted for him. But the critical counties and voting precincts that he flipped from Obama to him, right? The areas in the Great Lakes states that Trump won that Obama had won were decisive. That's how come he won the race. That's how come he beat Hillary. And those areas were characterized by people who, by a population that had very high percentage of veterans, and specifically family who were involved in the Middle East wars that had been going on since 2003. And they also included a disproportionate number of people who had been negatively impacted by globalism. And it makes perfect sense, right? Because we know that many of these communities, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, these are communities, many of them are blue collar, folks who haven't gone to college, who have been, go into the military because of the economic draft, right? That's an opportunity to make a decent living, to have a career where you have retirement, security, and who lived in communities or live in communities where mills, factories were, have been downscaled, downsized, or taken offline because of cheaper labor in Asia and Latin America. So those are the communities that flipped. I don't think it was irrational. I don't think there was any unconvincing information that persuaded underemployed factory workers whose daughter is in Iran, or I guess not Iran, whose daughter is serving in Iraq or Afghanistan. I don't think they were motivated by bad information or faulty logic. It's understandable why they would have voted for Trump. And it's logical and it's based on facts. So I reject that example by Colbert. But she is pretty, she'll say, well, they were anti-vax. And, which is to a degree illogical. I agree with that. Vaccines, by and large, do much more good than harm. But she can't acknowledge the harm that for-profit pharma has done too. So, it's really fascinating to me that she's so easily prepared to criticize people who don't vote the way she does for being illogical, for not changing their minds based on facts. And she presents an example that really doesn't support her thesis. And it's ironic, it's amazing, because she even quotes these researchers. Humans aren't randomly credulous. We're quite adept at spying the weaknesses in others' arguments, she says, but we're blind about our own. So how ironic is that? She would, if I were writing this piece, and I would have immediately wanted to look at myself. What am I missing? What am I getting wrong here? What do I believe that isn't true? What facts disprove my beliefs? But she doesn't do that at all. Instead, she picks a guy she doesn't like, who just got elected president, and says the people who voted for him are the ones who are blind. She's real good at pointing out their blind spots, even though we can't really say they were being particularly blind in that case. But she seems unwilling. And I read through that whole article and I was like, are you going to talk about yourself? Are you going to examine your own class? Are you going to examine the people that you, for example, went to school with and say, gee, we got this wrong? Nope. So, given that fact, I don't see how we can be expected to change our minds, to change our behaviors, to accept facts that don't comport with our beliefs. It seems like that's not going to happen. Because this author, this extremely good writer, she's an outstanding writer, this highly educated academic, she can't even look at her own biases, her own prejudices, and question them. Heck, if she had at least gone through it and said, well, I looked at everything I believe, and I don't think here's where I've changed my mind. Here's where new facts have caused me to reconsider my opinions. She can't even do that. So yeah, I'm not optimistic, no. Hey, and on that cheerful note, have a great holiday season. I'll see you in the new year.